Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is VIN1294. This is a 2016 paint code 223, which is caviar with LA20 or black interior. Popped up here in the middle of November 2025 in Marysville, Ohio at a dealer with 30,000 miles for $57,000. So definitely a price premium for the low mileage. And so we'll dive into it and see what that's all about. Production statistics: 448 out of the 2,348 cars I've identified were caviar, paint code 223. That's 19% of these cars were black. 225 had LA20 black interior, so black on black. That's 9.58% of these cars were this color combination. So as far as that goes, pretty common. We'll call it like a 4 out of 10 for rarity. It's a color combination that you would probably see plenty more available, however, not with this low of miles. Specific for 2016, 284 out of the 1,417 cars that I've identified for the US 49 were caviar. That's about 20%. 148 had LA20 black interior, which is 10.5%. But overall, 9.58% of these cars had this color combination. Carfax, Epic VIN, and AutoCheck. So Carfax shows this as a 2-owner, no accident car. Epic VIN shows this as a 3-owner, no accident car. And AutoCheck also shows this as a 3-owner, no accident car. And regarding the 2 or 3 owner, it looks like during the 2nd to 3rd owner or the 1st to 2nd owner, however you want to report it, it was listed for sale, and then it was listed like in July, and it was listed for sale again in October, and everybody else except Carfax counted that as an owner change. So I don't know if maybe the dealership took inventory of it and titled it under the dealership. Either way, it was a short ownership for one of the owners. It looks like it is a 2 or 3 owner car, however you look at it, but one of the owners is a very short-term ownership with no accidents, 30,000 miles, and $57,000. Previous sales: April of 2016, $84,000 in Kentucky, so it was already discounted almost $5,000 off of list price, and it was still for sale in September of 16, and it looks like it finally sold in November of 16, which is 7 months for sale from new. Pretty common to see for these cars, as you've heard me talk about in other videos. The dealers didn't want to discount them a lot. The buying public did not like these cars at $90,000. They liked them in like the low to mid 70s, which is probably where this car sold when it was new. 7 months for sale. Next time it was publicly for sale is July of 2022. L certified, Lexus certified, certified pre-owned, $64,500 with 11,000 miles in Ohio. Still for sale in October of 2022, $59,000. Now it has 12,000 miles, so somebody was driving it around a little bit, but the price went down $5,000. And in those photos, that's 3 years ago, in those photos, it looked fantastic. Very clean. Overall, I didn't see any issues there. The reason that's important is because currently there are no photos that are listed yet. And so we basically have to go off of how it looked 3 years ago and the service history. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. It looks like it was for sale in July of 22 and then October of 22. And this is where that ownership change was reported on Epic VIN and on AutoCheck, but not on Carfax. And on Carfax, it shows a title correction, so around that same time. So something going on there that's kind of funky, but just know that it's probably a 2-owner car, but it could be a 3-owner depending on how you want to look at it. But look at the Carfax and the AutoCheck very closely on this car. So normally I would talk about the photos. However, with this car, there are no photos up yet. And I would assume that if it doesn't sell pretty quick, which it probably will, if it doesn't sell really quick, then they will get further photos for you to view and see, and I'll watch for those as well. I may end up doing an update on this car if the photos are far off from what we kind of can assume about this car. So do the usual things. Look at the carbon fiber trim on the interior, look at the carbon fiber on the front, the rear spoiler, look at the bolster wear on the seats, the usual things, and of course, obviously, the paint condition and just general overall how it looks, especially for this dealer. They're asking a pretty premium price for it. And I would say it's not far off of where I would probably put this car. There are others for sale right now that are listed for more than this. That one that has 10,000 miles for $65,000. There's others in like the mid to upper 50s, which is the ballpark of where this car should be, and it is. So the listing dealer is not too far off for the expected price that you would see for this car. The only thing that it doesn't have going for it is it's not a one owner car. So these others that were listed were one owner, no accident cars. So this one is a 2 or 3 owner, no accident car. Still, there are less than 1,000 of those left, 1,000 GSFs left, less than 1,000 GSF left, that are clean title, no accidents like this car. So this is one of those. I would say as long as it needs nothing, then the price is perfect. Now, if it needs brakes, tires, carbon fiber trim, some other reconditioning, then the $57,000 is too high. So adjust accordingly based on if you go to look at this car. And so now we'll jump into the service history and see what else we can find on this car. It does look like it's pretty well dealer serviced. And the first entry of note is October of 2016 with 195 miles installed paint protection film. So that's another good thing on this car. So that's probably explains why in the photos in 2022, even though it's black, you don't see any chips or anything like that, because it has paint protection film. That also means that the paint protection film on this car is 9 years old. So if you are buying this, I would probably look at replacing it just because of age. I would assume it's probably got some peppered and lifting on edges and things like that just with 9 years of use. But it is a low mile car, so it's probably done a lot of sitting as well. If this was a car I was gonna buy, I would definitely replace that paint protection film. So put another couple $1,000s aside for that if this is something that you're going to seriously consider driving or really, collecting too. I still would highly recommend replacing the paint protection film on this. December of 2016, 260 miles, they noted to repair the bumper or do touch-ups. So I don't know, it doesn't say which bumper and it doesn't say what they did other than touch-ups. So I don't know if it maybe had a couple things. It could have been touch-ups to the paint protection film. Sometimes edges lift and they can trim them, and there's a little bit of question there, but I don't think it'd be anything major. June of 2018, the JLB recall was done. That's the high pressure fuel pumps. So good to see that is done and out of the way. December of 2020, the KLG was done. That is the customer service program for the GPS location. So it would show you off on the side road when you're on the main highway or something like that. It resolves that. That's done. Most of these cars have had that addressed already. In that same service, they also noted a leaking oil pan, and it says that the oil pan was removed and resealed with FIPG gasket sealant. I wouldn't call that common, but I have seen that on more than a few of these cars, especially early on. Like maybe something got missed on a corner when they were assembling the engine, but not a big deal. It was probably done under warranty. Shouldn't have another issue for a long time. July of 2022 at 11,000 miles, front pads, sensors, and resurface the front rotors, 2 front tires, 4 certified pre-owned prep. They also did PDR, refinished the wheels in air quotes two-tone, and I would assume that's just the factory finish, the polished and the gray, and also repair some of the seat scratches. They say they had a leather specialist come and repair the seat. So it looks like kind of the usual things that they do for certified pre-owned prep. So in 2022 at 11,000 miles, so now this car has 30,000, it had front brakes done. You usually get no more than 20 or 30,000 miles out of front brakes on these cars. 11,000, that's pretty early. So either it's had a lot of short distances, which is probably the case, or it's been driven hard, which it doesn't appear that would be the case. So the next entry of note, which is also the most recent service, is June of 2024. So that's not quite a year and a half ago, but at 27,000 miles or 3,000 miles ago. So not that long ago mileage wise. Oil and filter. And they also had, when you run the Carfax on this, sometimes it shows you a lot more detail on alignment things and of that nature. So this is one of those. So I'll show you on the screen here. They reported that the front tires had 5/32, and they also had a toe issue. So usually the toe issue on these cars is caused by lower control arm bushings. So probably needs front lower control arm bushings. That's probably the case. If they haven't replaced the front tires, look at the insides of the front tires to see if you see an excessive wear. I would assume that's probably the case here. But in that same alignment, they noted that the rear tires were down to the cords on the inside, so it needs rear tires. Hopefully in the last 3,000 miles, those have been replaced. So when you go look at this car, see if it's got new rear tires. If it doesn't, then it needs new rear tires. They also noted that the front brakes were at 6 millimeters remaining and the rear brakes were at 7 millimeters. The rear brakes you can expect to get 40 to 50,000 miles out of. So this car probably will need brakes within the next 10 to 20,000 miles, if not sooner, depending on if it had a lot of short trips. The front brakes at 6 millimeters, The sensors will go off at 2 millimeters, so you've probably got like 10,000 miles left on the front brakes, but it's probably getting a good time to set aside some money for brakes and tires and lower control arm bushings on this car. The usual things that you see these cars. Usually when these cars are for sale, they all need brakes, they all need tires. Probably the case here. So what's not done? The ZLZ customer service program. That is the sticky delaminating deforming dash. That is covered 10 years from the in-service date on this car. So you have a little bit longer, but not much until this car is out of that. So you can get your dash covered, no charge to you. But if it's even the slightest bit sticky, go to Lexus and have them replace it right away. The HVAC servo sweep. If you have any stored codes for the HVAC servos, then you need to get a sweep done. If they come back, then you have to get the servos done. The common issue with those is when you set one side to cold, set one side to hot, it doesn't respond. So like both sides would stay cold. So you need to cycle through all of that when you test out this car. Make sure the car is fully up to temperature. Cycle through the defrost, the head, the feet, the refresh, the recirculate, all of that. Do all of it. And if any of that does not do what it should, then you are going to be on the hook for some expensive servos. Some of them can be replaced without removing the dash, but if you're going to do the ZLZ, it's a good time to just go ahead and replace all of them. It's not inexpensive to do so, but you'll do it and save a fortune in labor otherwise. So I also don't see anything about any of the carbon fiber being replaced. So all of the carbon fiber trim in the interior is original. Expected if you're going to take it to a cold environment, cold climate, expect it to delaminate pretty quickly. But all 5 of the common front pieces, the left and right front doors, the left and right front dash pieces, and the center console around the shifter, those are all prone to delamination. You see it very commonly on these cars. If you were to replace all 5 of those at the dealer, it is nearly $10,000. And so you can send it to a company like SMA Fabrication in Florida. I have a discount code, AllThingsF. You get 10% off. And I don't see a dime from it. I'm just helping out a small business. He's done work on this car, and the blue one that I just picked up too is gonna be getting some work from me there too. One other thing that I don't see done is the low pressure fuel pump being reprogrammed on this car. So if you're gonna go test drive this car, shut everything off in the inside, leave the engine running, and listen in the back seat. If you hear a humming or a buzzing, then it needs to be reprogrammed. And all they do, they will reprogram the ECM and it makes that buzzing or the otherwise noise that you hear go away. Would I buy this car? I think at this price, it would have to have nothing wrong with it, meaning no carbon fiber issues. The lower control arm bushings are not worn, which it sounds like they are. It doesn't need tires, it doesn't need brakes, which it sounds like it's, kind of mid to end of life of brakes, getting towards the latter third of its life. That's basically what it would come to. So it has paint protection film, but it needs replacement, just on age, if nothing else. The other thing I didn't mention is valley plate. You need to inspect the valley plate. This car has not had it done, and it is heat cycles and age. And it sounds like this car, based on having brakes at 10,000 miles, it's probably had a lot of short trips, a lot of heat cycles. So I would not be surprised if the valley plate is starting to leak on this car. So that's another thing. A pre-purchase inspection sounds like a really good idea to do on this car because you could have some potential gotchas, but you need to go into this realizing that you're paying a premium price for this car with low mileage, but if it needs more, your $57,000 purchase is now $60,000 or $62,000, $63,000. At that point, you could be looking at a 2019 or 2020 with this kind of mileage instead of a 16. So that is something to think about. I would just go into this expecting to do brakes, tires, carbon fiber, valley plate, lower control arm bushings, a couple of the reprogramming things, the usual things that these cars need, but at $57,000, it better not need those. So when the pictures show up, or if somebody goes and looks at it, I really don't see any red flags per se. I see lots of green flags, good bones, and it's just going into it knowing that you're gonna have to spend a little bit more money on this when on top of the purchase price. And that's not unexpected with these cars, but it's just something you have to know going forward that you are paying a premium for it, but you'll have to put a little bit more money into it possibly. And I'm just gonna assume that you probably will have to do that kind of stuff unless this dealer actually did it. But they're probably just looking at the mileage and looking at other comparable sales, and they're not far off, but those other comparable sales were ready to go. So hopefully this car is, but worth checking out for sure. I would definitely consider it. And it's it has good bones, it has good potential, worth going and checking out. If you guys have, if you have looked at this car, please let me know in the comments what you know, or drop me an email. Go to About on my YouTube channel and send me an email. And I'm really curious about this car because it sounds like it's got the makings of a great one. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I feel like I'm rambling on. VIN 1294. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon. Move, 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 move.